The gallery hall in Abidjan was glowing with soft golden lights, each painting worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Wealthy collectors circled like vultures in designer suits, whispering about prestige and power. At the center of it all stood Madame Clarisse Caudillo, the billionaire art patron whose name commanded respect across West Africa. But the night shattered when a trembling young woman dressed in a simple cleaning apron stepped forward. Her name was Zara Williams, the daughter of the maid who scrubbed the gallery floors every morning before sunrise. With every eye burning into her, Zara pointed at the prized masterpiece displayed behind bulletproof glass. Her voice cracked, but she spoke in flawless French, loud enough for the chandelier to tremble. Ce tableau est une imitation, pas l'original. That painting is a fake. Gasps ricocheted around the room. Clarisse's smile evaporated. Security surged forward, but Zara didn't retreat. Instead, she stepped closer to the painting, her heart pounding as she prepared to expose the truth, one that had been buried for years. One that involved betrayal, stolen legacy, and a wealthy family who never imagined a maid's daughter could challenge them. And what Zara revealed next changed every powerful life in that room forever. Zara Williams never imagined her life would collide with the world of billionaires, art collectors, and international scandals. She had spent most of her childhood sweeping marble floors, dusting rooms she was never allowed to sit in, and watching her mother move silently through wealthy households like a shadow. Her mother, Alma Williams, was a maid, one of the best in the city. She had served the Caudillo family for 16 long years, loyal and invisible, working tirelessly so her daughter could stay in school. Alma always whispered the same words to Zara before dawn, when they walked together to the mansion. "My child, don't let this place shrink your dreams. Know who you are." And Zara did know. She was brilliant, observant, gifted with a mind that absorbed details like a sponge. What no one knew, not Clarisse Caudillo, not the other workers, not even Omar, was that Zara had an unusual passion: art. While other children played in the courtyard, Zara sat in the servants' quarters flipping through old magazines her mother had rescued from trash piles. She copied every line, every brushstroke, every color. She studied the works of African masters and European legends. She trained herself to identify styles, pigments, techniques, signatures, the tiny fingerprint of every artist. She hadn't learned this from a school or a teacher. She learned it from hunger. The hunger to rise, to be more than a girl from nowhere, to prove that genius could bloom even in the cracks of society. So, when she was accepted into a small art restoration program at a community college, on full scholarship, no one was prouder than Amma. The tuition wasn't expensive, but even the transport costs were heavy. Zara worked part-time cleaning, helping, translating French for tourists. Anything to keep her education alive. Everything changed the day Madame Clarisse announced she was opening a new private gallery, displaying her prized masterpiece, Le Souffle de Lumière, the breath of light. The painting was considered one of the most valuable in West Africa. Created by the revered Ivorian artist Kofi Adu, it was rumored to be worth millions. Collectors whispered about it like a myth. And Clarisse? She flaunted it like a crown. Amma had dusted the frame of that painting week after week under strict orders. Do not touch the canvas. Do not breathe near it. Do not look too long. But one day, Zara accompanied her mother to help with extra work before the grand opening. The gallery was empty, quiet, flooded with warm lights. Zara stood before the famous painting for the first time, and something felt wrong. She leaned closer, very close, her eyes tracing the edges of the brushstrokes. The layering was inconsistent. The blending was too modern. The signature looked forced. The age-marked patterns didn't match Kofi Adu's known style. Zara stepped back slowly, her throat tight. "No, this is impossible," she whispered. But everything inside her screamed the same conclusion. This painting is not genuine. She didn't say a word to her mother. She didn't want Alma losing her job. She simply went home with the question burning inside her. For nights she studied photographs of the original online. She compared them stroke for stroke, color for color. Her conclusion never changed. It was a masterpiece of deception, impressive, expensive but absolutely fake. Still, Zara planned to stay silent. Because people like her didn't challenge billionaires. People like Emma could lose their lives' work. People like Zara could disappear, then everything turned upside down. 2 days before the opening, Alma came home shaking. Her apron, usually neatly folded, hung from her hand like a flag of defeat. "Madame fired me," she whispered. The words hit Zara like a slap. "What? Why?" Emma's eyes filled with tears she fought to hide. She said, "I scratched the frame. I would never. I would never." Zara didn't need proof. She knew her mother's hands steady, careful, precise. She had cleaned priceless items for years without a single mistake. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. And now Zara understood. If the painting was fake, if someone in the Caudillo household was involved, then Alma was the perfect scapegoat. A powerless maid with no voice. Easy to blame. Easy to discard. Zara sat awake the entire night, her mind burning. Her mother had sacrificed everything for her. Now it was Zara's turn. She would not stay silent. Not this time. The evening of the gallery opening arrived. The city's elite walked in wearing gowns, tuxedos, glittering diamonds. Musicians played soft jazz. Champagne flowed like water. French, English, and local Ivorian dialects mingled like a river of arrogance. And in the middle of that glittering ocean stood Zara wearing a simple dress. Her hair tied back, her heartbeat thundering. She shouldn't have been there. She wasn't on the guest list. But she walked in with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. She saw the painting behind glass again. Perfect, proud, untouched. A lie. A lie that had destroyed her mother's dignity. Clarice Caudillo took the stage with a rehearsed smile, ready to unveil her prized treasure. Cameras pointed. Guests leaned forward. Zara felt her breath tighten. Her mother's trembling voice echoed in her mind. "Know who you are." So she stepped forward. Her pulse roared in her ears. Every eye turned toward the maid's daughter. She inhaled sharply and spoke in crisp, flawless French, her voice stronger than she expected. "See, tableau. As stunned fall. This painting is a fake." The room froze. But the fire inside Zara had just begun to burn. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of the Whitmore Gallery, painting streaks of gold across the polished floors. Zara, barely 12, adjusted her apron nervously, though her eyes betrayed a mixture of excitement and determination. She had watched these paintings every day for years, learning their brushstrokes, textures, and subtle patterns during her mother's cleaning shifts. Today, she noticed something unusual about the new addition to the gallery. Portrait that had been heralded as a lost masterpiece by the renowned painter, Monet. There was a slight unevenness in the layering of colors, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but to Zara, it shouted of inauthenticity. Her heart raced as she approached the canvas, her fingers itching to trace the contours she had memorized from books and old photographs. She recalled the conversations she had overheard from art handlers and security staff, who often dismissed these artworks as beyond reproach. But Zara had learned that even in the grandest galleries, arrogance often blinded experts to truth. The gallery was unusually quiet that morning, except for the faint creak of shoes on polished wood and the distant hum of the city beyond the mansion gates. Zara crouched slightly, observing the painting from multiple angles, noting the unnatural sheen in the upper left corner where the artist's brush should have left a textured pattern. Her mind raced through everything she had read about Monet's techniques, the layering of oil paints, the subtle glazing that created depth, the imperceptible touch that defined his signature style. She whispered softly to herself in French, the language she had perfected over years of study through books, apps, and her mother's encouragement. "Ceci ne correspond pas," she murmured, realizing the painting's brushwork was inconsistent with authentic Monet works. Her pulse quickened, knowing that this observation, if true, could change everything, not just for her but for the entire art world that had trusted this gallery for decades. "Marie," Her mother appeared quietly behind her, carrying a small dusting cloth, her tired eyes widening as she noticed her daughter's intensity. "Zara, what is it?" she asked softly, careful not to startle her. Zara hesitated for a moment, then spoke in rapid, precise French. "Mother, this painting, it is a forgery. The brush strokes, the texture, the layering, they are all wrong. Someone is trying to pass this off as a Monet, but it isn't authentic." Marie's eyes widened further, a mix of fear and pride flooding her expression. She knew the implications. If Zara was correct, this could trigger a scandal that reached the highest levels of the art world. And yet she also knew her daughter's extraordinary mind, how meticulous, patient and observant she had become, even in her youth. She nodded silently, signaling quiet support as Zara prepared to take the next steps. Zara began documenting her findings, taking photographs of the areas that betrayed the forgery, noting discrepancies in paint composition, color saturation, and signature placement. She referred to her meticulously kept notes from art history books and past museum exhibits, cross-referencing each stroke with authentic works. Each observation strengthened her conviction that the painting was not genuine. By mid-morning, the gallery was bustling with curators and staff preparing for a routine inspection by Dr. Whitmore, the gallery's patron and a respected figure in the international art community. Zara's mother, sensing both opportunity and risk, quietly guided her to the office where Dr. Whitmore reviewed acquisitions. "Zara, this is serious," Marie whispered. "Be precise, be calm, and don't let anyone intimidate you." Zara nodded, her young face set with determination, understanding the weight of responsibility resting on her shoulders. When Dr. Whitmore arrived, his sharp eyes scanned the gallery before settling on the painting in question. Zara stepped forward, her small stature barely visible behind the large mahogany desk, yet her voice rang clear and confident. She spoke in French first, then English, carefully explaining her observations, the unusual layering, the inconsistencies with known Monet techniques, and the subtle but undeniable signs of modern chemical compounds in the paint. Dr. Whitmore's eyes narrowed as he examined her evidence, clearly impressed by the depth of her analysis. He asked her to elaborate further on her methodology, prompting Zara to detail her approach to studying brush patterns, pigment composition, and historical accuracy. Each explanation was precise, showing both her expertise and her dedication. As word of Zara's discovery spread through the gallery, the atmosphere shifted. Staff who had previously dismissed the young girl now watched her with astonishment. James, the night security guard, muttered under his breath, "I've seen her at it for years, but I never imagined." Others began quietly admitting they had noticed her unique talent during mundane interactions, how she had quietly catalogued books, assisted in translations, and corrected minor errors in labels that no one else noticed. The hum of disbelief and admiration spread through the staff like wildfire. For Zara, this acknowledgement was both empowering and humbling. She realized that her years of quiet study, her perseverance despite limited resources, and her refusal to let age or background define her, had finally culminated in a moment where she could make a tangible impact. Meanwhile, the gallery's internal investigation began. Experts were called in to examine the painting, verify its authenticity, and trace its provenance. Zara meticulously guided each step, demonstrating techniques for analyzing brushstrokes, pigment composition, and canvas age. Her knowledge spanned decades of artistic history, compressed into her 12 years of study and observation. Colleagues who had once considered her invisible now leaned in, eager to learn from her insights. She even helped translate technical documents from French and Italian, ensuring every expert could cross-check her findings without delay. The gallery, once rigid in its hierarchy, began to shift as the truth became undeniable. The painting was indeed a forgery. Tensions rose as they prepared to notify the Whitmore family and potentially the public. Dr. Whitmore, usually reserved and formal, looked to Zara with admiration. "Your analysis is extraordinary, Zara," he said quietly. "I have never seen anyone of any age approach this level of precision and insight." You have uncovered something that could have gone unnoticed by even the most seasoned professionals. Zara felt a mixture of pride and responsibility, aware that this was only the beginning. The forgery was part of a larger network, and she suspected that this discovery could have far-reaching consequences beyond the gallery walls. By late afternoon, the gallery team had gathered enough evidence to confront the painting's source. Anticipation filled the air as Dr. Whitmore called for a formal review meeting, inviting experts, staff, and the museum board. Zara's mother sat beside her, proud and anxious, knowing the significance of what her daughter had achieved. The young girl, though nervous, exuded a quiet confidence. She had prepared for this moment through countless hours of study, careful observation, and relentless curiosity. Each piece of evidence she presented was backed by methodical research, demonstrating not only her skill but her ability to communicate complex concepts clearly and persuasively. When the board meeting began, the accused dealer, Antoine Dubois, entered with the air of authority he had cultivated over decades. He was confident, almost arrogantly so, assuming no one could challenge his expertise. Zara, however, remained unfazed. She had anticipated the scrutiny, prepared responses, and memorized critical details that could expose inconsistencies in his claims. The room was filled with tension as each expert examined her findings. Her analysis methodically revealed flaws in the painting's provenance, inconsistencies in brush technique, and subtle chemical markers impossible to replicate in authentic Monet works. The more she spoke, the more obvious it became that this was not a simple error, it was a deliberate forgery. As the confrontation unfolded, Zara's multilingual skills became crucial. When Dubois spoke in French, assuming no one would understand, Zara quietly listened, absorbing every word. She realized that his arrogance had become his greatest vulnerability. Her ability to switch seamlessly between languages allowed her to decode his careless admissions, capturing details about forgers, operational locations, and international collaborators. Each revelation she presented to the board and FBI agents in attendance dismantled the carefully constructed facade Dubois had maintained for decades. Her youth and position, once perceived as limitations, had become powerful instruments in exposing a global criminal network. By evening, the gallery was abuzz with a mix of awe, relief, and admiration. Zara's meticulous work had not only identified a forgery, but had also begun to unravel a much larger criminal scheme. Staff members who had once felt invisible were inspired to share their hidden skills, from poetry and photography to language translation and culinary expertise. Zara, with Marie beside her, reflected on the generational impact of her mother's sacrifices. It was through quiet support, encouragement, and access to books and apps that she had developed the skills necessary to uncover this truth. The ripple effect was immediate. The gallery staff, now emboldened, began sharing knowledge and mentoring one another, creating a culture that valued talent over title, curiosity over age. By the time night fell, the gallery's lights cast long shadows across the polished floors, echoing the monumental shift that had occurred. Zara, exhausted but exhilarated, returned to her mother's side. They shared a quiet moment, reflecting on the journey that had led to this point, from hours spent in secret study to the meticulous documentation and the courage to speak truth to power. The brass key to the gallery's archives, once a symbol of access, now represented recognition, validation, and the promise of new opportunities for all those whose talents had been overlooked. This was just the beginning. The forgery was exposed, but the chain reaction it triggered would extend far beyond the walls of the gallery, touching international institutions, collectors, and aspiring young minds worldwide. Zara finally understood that her discovery was not just about identifying a fake painting. It was about proving that brilliance could emerge from any background, that talent needed recognition, and that age, race, or economic status did not determine one's ability to change the world. The gallery, once a place of silent hierarchy, was now transformed into a hub of collaboration, respect, and empowerment. Marie's eyes glistened with tears of pride, realizing that every sacrifice she had made, every hour working, every opportunity given to her daughter had contributed to this historic moment. And for Zara, the path ahead was clear. She would continue to study, learn, and mentor, ensuring that the invisible experts around her would finally be seen, heard, and valued. The days following Zara's revelation in the gallery were a whirlwind of activity, each moment brimming with both anticipation and tension. Word of the alleged forgery traveled rapidly through the city's elite art circles, sparking curiosity, skepticism, and outrage in equal measure. Reporters from major newspapers and television stations called the Whitmore Gallery repeatedly, eager to secure interviews with the young prodigy whose name was now whispered in every reputable museum and auction house. Agents from the FBI and Interpol quietly began coordinating their efforts, preparing to investigate the wider network that Zara suspected had been operating for years. Meanwhile, the gallery staff, once reserved and skeptical, were now buzzing with renewed energy. James, the night security guard, walked through the gallery, reciting snippets of poetry he had secretly written for years, while the maintenance supervisor shared photographs he had taken during off hours, each capturing moments of natural beauty in the city unnoticed by most. Even the kitchen staff began experimenting with new international recipes, inspired by the languages Zara had taught them, transforming ordinary meals into miniature lessons in culture and technique. The environment, once quiet and routine, had evolved into a hub of curiosity, learning, and shared expertise, each staff member contributing their unique talents under the subtle leadership of a 12-year-old girl. Amidst this renewed energy, Zara dedicated herself to the meticulous examination of every painting recently acquired by the Whitmore Gallery. She spent long hours in the archives, cross-referencing notes, comparing known authentic pieces with suspicious acquisitions, and compiling detailed reports. Her mother, Marie, continued to support her silently, often bringing her meals and organizing her notes, but always remaining in the background, allowing Zara to shine. During one particularly long session, Zara discovered a series of tiny, almost imperceptible signatures on the edges of several canvases, traces left by forgers attempting to mimic authentic brushwork. Her heart raced as she realized that these subtle clues could connect multiple works to the same fraudulent source, revealing a network more extensive than anyone had imagined. She carefully documented each mark, photographing and translating notes in French and Italian, her mind moving at lightning speed as she pieced together the puzzle. By evening, she had mapped out a tentative network of forgers, dealers, and intermediaries, each connected through a series of transactions designed to avoid scrutiny. The gallery's senior staff, initially hesitant to involve Zara in high-level meetings, now relied on her insights to guide their decisions. Dr. Whitmore, impressed by her depth of knowledge, organized a special board meeting to review her findings. The room was tense as executives, legal advisors, and museum consultants gathered, each aware of the gravity of Zara's discoveries. When she began presenting, her voice was calm but commanding, detailing the inconsistencies she had identified, the chemical analysis of paint samples, and the historical inaccuracies embedded in the forged pieces. Her multilingual skills allowed her to translate correspondence and invoices from European dealers, uncovering coded references that had previously gone unnoticed. Each revelation drew murmurs of disbelief and admiration from the room. A child, barely 12, was dismantling transactions and networks that seasoned professionals had failed to detect for years. As she concluded her presentation, Dr. Whitmore leaned forward, his expression a mixture of pride and astonishment. "This level of insight," he said softly, "is unparalleled in the art world. Zara, you have changed the way we understand authenticity." Soon, the investigation expanded beyond the walls of the gallery. FBI agent Sarah Thompson arrived personally, carrying documents and reports detailing previous fraud cases connected to international collectors. Her sharp eyes scanned Zara's maps and notes as she quickly recognized the girl's unparalleled contribution. "Your ability to connect disparate clues across languages and artistic styles is extraordinary," Agent Thompson remarked, impressed by Zara's methodical approach. She explained that the network they were investigating spanned multiple countries, including France, Italy, Germany, and the United States. involving hundreds of transactions and millions of dollars in fraudulent sales. Zara listened carefully, absorbing the new data and immediately beginning to cross-reference it with her own findings. The agents and experts in the room were astonished at her ability to spot patterns invisible to adults with decades of experience. It became increasingly clear that this young girl was not just an assistant. She was central to unraveling a complex, multinational criminal operation. Meanwhile, the French art dealer responsible for many of the forged works became increasingly agitated as news of the investigation leaked. His arrogance had always convinced him that his reputation and charm could protect him from scrutiny, but the depth and precision of Zara's work now left him vulnerable. He arrived at the Whitmore mansion with his team of high-priced lawyers, radiating confidence, but the room was charged with anticipation, and every eye turned toward the young girl who had upended the art world's expectations. When introduced formally as the lead authentication specialist, Zara's presence caused a ripple of disbelief. Dubois laughed, openly mocking the notion that a 12-year-old could wield any authority over matters of priceless art. He leaned back in his chair, smug and dismissive, certain that he would easily intimidate both the gallery staff and law enforcement officials. Zara, however, remained composed. She quietly observed Dubois, noting subtle cues in his demeanor, the slight tremor in his hands when he believed no one was watching, the careless way he shifted documents around, and the arrogance that had been his greatest asset but now threatened to betray him. As Dubois spoke, he switched to French, assuming that the Americans in the room would not understand. He revealed details about his Italian network, speaking freely about forger locations, clients, and methods. What he did not anticipate was that Zara had mastered these languages, and she quietly absorbed every word. Her mind catalogued each piece of incriminating information, understanding that his overconfidence had just provided them with the most critical evidence needed to dismantle his operations. The FBI agents exchanged subtle glances, recognizing that Zara's linguistic abilities had turned an ordinary meeting into an unparalleled opportunity for gathering intelligence. As Dubois continued speaking, Zara prepared her own intervention. She remained silent until the perfect moment, then rose and addressed him in flawless French, her voice clear, precise, and filled with authority. The room fell silent, every professional and agent turning to watch this remarkable exchange. "Monsieur Dubois," she began, her tone steady yet commanding, "I understood every word you just said." The effect was immediate. Dubois's confident mask faltered as he realized that the very information he thought safe had now been exposed. Zara's continued questions in Italian forced him to acknowledge details about Milanese forgers, delivery routes, and client names he had assumed were securely hidden. Each revelation was methodically recorded by agents and experts, ensuring that no aspect of his admissions could be challenged later. The gallery staff, witnessing this interaction, were inspired beyond measure. James, who had always been quietly creative, now felt emboldened to present his poetry at an upcoming gallery event. The maintenance supervisor began organizing a local photography exhibit, encouraged by Zara's demonstration that hidden talents deserved recognition. Even the kitchen staff, inspired by her linguistic abilities, began collaborating on new international recipes to share with visitors, turning mundane routines into creative expression. The ripple effect was profound. A single act of courage and intellect by Zara had transformed not only the immediate investigation but also the culture within the gallery, fostering an environment where creativity and talent were recognized and valued, regardless of formal credentials. As the day progressed, Zara and her mother reviewed the vast amount of information collected. Marie was awed by her daughter's meticulous attention to detail, noting that years of quiet observation, encouragement, and access to resources had prepared Zara for this monumental task. They discussed each lead carefully, ensuring no detail was overlooked. Zara's notes, once scattered across notebooks and digital files, were now compiled comprehensive reports that connected forged paintings to specific forgers, clients, and shipping routes. Her careful documentation became a blueprint for the FBI and international authorities, enabling them to plan simultaneous operations across multiple countries. The gravity of the situation weighed on her young shoulders, but Zara remained focused, knowing that precision and patience were critical to the success of the operation. By evening, the Whitmore Gallery had become a hub of controlled chaos. Experts were arriving from around the world, each eager to collaborate with Zara and Dr. Whitmore. The walls, once silent witnesses to centuries of art, now echoed with discussions in multiple languages, theories being tested and evidence being scrutinized. Zara, at the center of it all, guided each interaction with confidence and clarity, her voice carrying authority far beyond her years. She demonstrated authentication techniques, analyzed patterns in brushstrokes, and explained the implications of chemical tests with the same precision as a seasoned art historian. Every step reinforced her reputation as not only a prodigy, but a critical force in a groundbreaking international investigation. As night fell, the mansion's lights illuminated the gallery, casting long shadows over the polished floors. Zara sat quietly with her mother in a corner, reflecting on the day's events. "Mother, this is bigger than I imagined," she whispered, her voice filled with both awe and responsibility. Marie took her hand, pride radiating from her tired face. "Yes, baby, but it is your brilliance, your focus, and your courage that brought us here. Remember, talent exists everywhere, but it needs recognition and opportunity to flourish." They shared a quiet, knowing smile, aware that the journey ahead would be challenging, but also that Zara's extraordinary abilities had the power to change not just a gallery, but the world. The following morning, the Whitmore Gallery felt charged with purpose, as though every corner of the mansion carried the weight of the revelations from the previous day. Agents from the FBI, Interpol, and independent art experts gathered in the main hall, coordinating a strategy to dismantle the network of forgers and collectors implicated by Zara's meticulous observations. The young prodigy herself, despite her age, became the central point of consultation for each group. They marveled at her ability to navigate a maze of documents, invoices, and correspondence written in multiple languages, often identifying patterns and connections faster than even the most experienced investigators. Marie watched quietly from the side, her heart swelling with pride, remembering the countless evenings she had spent helping Zara download educational apps and read library books in secret, unaware that these small acts of encouragement were building the foundation for a global revelation. As the agents began their coordinated operations across different countries, Zara turned her attention to Antoine Dubois. He was seated across the room, flanked by his lawyers, visibly rattled after the previous day's exposure. Yet his pride and arrogance still lingered, a dangerous combination for someone facing international scrutiny. Dubois continued to underestimate the young girl, occasionally whispering to his assistants in French or Italian, oblivious to the fact that Zara understood every word. She catalogued each slip of the tongue, each careless admission, knowing that these fragments of information were the keys to unraveling the larger criminal network. At one point, Dubois tried to regain some semblance of control, presenting official receipts and documents to suggest that all previous sales were legitimate. But Zara, with her unwavering focus, immediately identified discrepancies in dates, signatures, and shipping records. Each inconsistency she highlighted further weakened his defenses and emboldened the investigators, demonstrating that the network's sophistication could not outmatch her careful analysis. During breaks, between interrogations and consultations, Zara found herself guiding the gallery staff through informal lessons, demonstrating techniques she had learned over years of self-study. She showed James how to recognize hidden patterns in brushstrokes, helping him relate the analytical method to his own poetry. The gardener, who had long been fascinated by exotic plants, now learned how to translate botanical care guides from Italian, understanding the intricate connections between language and precision. Even the kitchen staff, inspired by Zara's linguistic dexterity, began experimenting with authentic French and Italian recipes, carefully noting terminology and techniques. The gallery had transformed from a quiet space into a dynamic hub of learning, collaboration, and creative expression, all spurred by a 12-year-old girl whose brilliance had shattered preconceived notions about age, race, and socioeconomic background. Meanwhile, International media outlets began to catch wind of the investigation. Journalists from Europe, Asia, and North America called repeatedly, eager to report on the extraordinary events unfolding at the Whitmore mansion. Dr. Whitmore, recognizing both the importance of controlling information and protecting Zara's privacy, carefully coordinated press releases and limited interviews. Despite the pressures of media attention, Zara remained calm and focused, methodically reviewing each new document, interpreting codes in correspondence, and identifying forged works with astonishing precision. One afternoon, she uncovered a forged painting sent to a prominent Parisian collector, cleverly disguised as a long-lost work by a celebrated 19th-century artist. The chemical composition of the pigments did not match known materials from that period, and subtle inconsistencies in the brushwork indicated the hand of a forger who had operated in Milan months earlier. Her notes immediately went to Agent Thompson, who began planning a coordinated recovery and arrest operation across multiple European countries. The tension in the mansion increased as Dubois' legal team grew increasingly desperate. They attempted to intimidate Zara with legal jargon and references to professional protocol, suggesting that a child could not serve as an official authentication specialist in matters involving millions of dollars. Zara, however, remained unfazed. She calmly explained her methodologies, referencing historical techniques, chemical analyses, and linguistic cross-checks. Each point she made dismantled the lawyers' arguments, leaving them scrambling for responses. Dubois, visibly sweating, whispered to his assistants, trying to strategize in private, but every comment was catalogued by Zara, adding to the mountain of evidence against him. In moments of quiet observation, she realized that his arrogance, his belief that no one could match his knowledge or intelligence, was his ultimate vulnerability. It had blinded him to the reality that brilliance can emerge from the most unexpected places. As evening approached, Zara took a brief pause to reflect on the broader implications of the investigation. While the dismantling of the forgery network was paramount, she understood that her role extended beyond simply identifying fraudulent works. Each painting she verified, each criminal exposed, represented the culmination of years of invisible effort, often by individuals whose talents had been overlooked. She remembered the stories her mother had told her about friends, neighbors, and colleagues whose abilities had gone unrecognized due to economic or social circumstances. The thought propelled her forward, instilling in her the determination to ensure that talent, no matter where it resided, would be acknowledged and valued. The next day, the FBI executed synchronized operations in Paris, Milan, and New York. Thanks to Zara's detailed records, they were able to identify and recover several forgeries, arrest key members of the network, and secure evidence that linked additional collectors and intermediaries. Agents reported back regularly to the Whitmore mansion, each update reinforcing the magnitude of Zara's contribution. The young prodigy, working tirelessly alongside Dr. Whitmore and Agent Thompson, ensured that each detail was cross-referenced, each suspect accounted for, and each recovered piece accurately documented. Her proficiency with languages proved invaluable, as many of the intercepted documents were in French, Italian, and German, requiring precise translation to understand the implications fully. While the investigation unfolded internationally, local impacts began to manifest in the gallery. Staff members, inspired by Zara's courage and intellect, initiated their own projects. James began hosting evening poetry readings, attracting local writers and artists. The maintenance supervisor organized a small photography exhibition, showcasing images that captured unnoticed beauty around the city. The chef collaborated with gallery visitors, sharing authentic international recipes and explaining culinary terminology, demonstrating that learning could be integrated into every aspect of life. Marie watched quietly, overwhelmed by the transformation around her, recognizing that her sacrifices and encouragement had created ripples far beyond what she could have imagined. Dubois, meanwhile, began to crumble under the weight of mounting evidence. His once composed demeanor was replaced by agitation, fear, and anger. Every attempt to challenge Zara's credibility was met with meticulously documented proof of her observations. His assistants whispered nervously, aware that the careful chain of communication and verification had been entirely compromised by the girl they had underestimated. By the end of the week, Dubois' network was in complete disarray. His credibility shattered, and international law enforcement agencies fully mobilized to seize assets, arrest accomplices, and recover stolen or forged works. Zara's brilliance was further highlighted during meetings with museum directors and collectors who had unknowingly purchased forgeries. She explained in careful detail the subtle clues she had identified, the linguistic cross-references that had unveiled hidden connections, and the historical inaccuracies that betrayed the forger's techniques. Her calm and methodical approach earned the respect of even the most skeptical experts, who had previously doubted her age and background. They began to recognize that true expertise was not bound by formal credentials, but could emerge from dedication, observation, and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. As news of the unfolding operation spread, the media coverage intensified. Reporters highlighted Zara's unique contributions, emphasizing her age, background, and unparalleled skill set. Articles and news segments focused on her combination of linguistic prowess, meticulous analytical thinking, and unwavering moral clarity. Social media amplified her story, sparking conversations about education, opportunity, and the importance of recognizing hidden talent. Parents and educators reached out to share stories of children who had similarly been overlooked, inspired by Zara's example. The Whitmore Gallery, once a private and quiet institution, became a symbol of how talent can flourish when nurtured, recognized, and given a platform. Despite the global attention, Zara remained grounded. She continued mentoring her peers and gallery staff, reinforcing the importance of persistence, curiosity, and ethical responsibility. Each day she would spend hours teaching James how to analyze brushwork patterns, guiding the gardener in precise botanical documentation, or helping the kitchen staff master culinary terminology. The gallery had become a living laboratory of learning, a place where age, status, or previous assumptions about ability were irrelevant. Talent, when recognized and supported, could thrive. By the end of the month, the scale of the investigation had reached staggering proportions. Over 40 forgeries were identified and returned to their rightful owners. Hundreds of international communications had been analyzed, and dozens of suspects had been apprehended. The once hidden network that had exploited collectors and institutions for decades had been dismantled, and the evidence, carefully compiled by Zara, ensured that the court proceedings would be decisive. Her expertise, meticulous documentation, and linguistic skills had not only exposed a criminal network but had redefined what it meant to be an expert in the modern art world. The following morning, a tense hush settled over the Whitmore Gallery as investigators, museum officials, and FBI agents gathered for what was expected to be the final round of interrogations and document reviews. The mansion's grand halls, usually filled with the soft echo of footsteps and whispers of admiration for the art, now resonated with the careful clicking of pens, the soft hum of computers, and the measured voices of law enforcement. Zara, despite being only 12, stood at the center of this whirlwind, calm and composed, her eyes scanning charts, spreadsheets, and photographs of paintings. Each detail she reviewed revealed patterns invisible to others, slight differences in brushstroke rhythm, pigment composition anomalies, or unusual provenance gaps. Her ability to switch seamlessly between languages, French, Italian, German, and English, enabled her to translate obscure correspondences, providing actionable intelligence to the agents and experts. Marie, standing quietly by, felt an overwhelming mix of pride and humility. Remembering how many nights she had spent sneaking out extra time for Zara to study, downloading language apps on her phone, and patiently encouraging her daughter to pursue her insatiable curiosity despite the obstacles of their modest life. As the morning progressed, Antoine Dubois entered the gallery with his legal team, attempting to maintain an air of supreme confidence. However, the previous revelations had clearly shaken him. His steps were measured, his usual haughty smile replaced by a tense tightness around his mouth. He whispered to his assistant in French, unaware that Zara understood every word, noting with precision each slip he made. His arrogance, which had once shielded him from scrutiny, now exposed him to unrelenting scrutiny, and every phrase he muttered was documented by Zara for use in the unfolding investigation. Dubois attempted to distract the agents with ostentatious displays of documentation, invoices, certificates of authenticity, and photographs meant to imply legitimacy. Yet Zara, armed with her keen eye for detail and her encyclopedic knowledge of artistic techniques, systematically dissected each document. She pointed out inconsistencies, anachronistic markings, and handwriting discrepancies that even seasoned experts had missed. Every objection raised by his lawyers was met with a precise, evidence-backed counterpoint from the prodigy. Throughout the day, the gallery became a hive of controlled chaos. Agents coordinated with international offices in Paris, Milan, and London, planning synchronized raids and asset seizures. Each action was informed by the meticulous records Zara had compiled, coded messages between forgers, shipping records of forged artworks, and client lists that Dubois had inadvertently disclosed in moments of overconfidence. Agents marveled at her ability to correlate patterns across continents, recognizing that her intelligence and discipline had rendered the criminal network entirely traceable. Even seasoned FBI operatives admitted that the depth and breadth of her observational skills surpassed most adult specialists. Marie, observing quietly from the sidelines, reflected on the quiet sacrifices she had made that enabled her daughter to reach this moment. She realized that every deferred dream, every overtime shift, and every act of patience had created a foundation for this extraordinary triumph. By afternoon, Dubois' composure had begun to crumble visibly. His whispered French mutterings became increasingly desperate as he realized that the girl he had underestimated was simultaneously interpreting, documenting, and exposing every incriminating statement he made. The assistants around him grew uneasy, knowing that their carefully orchestrated defenses were unraveling. Zara, with measured precision, catalogued each revelation, ensuring that no detail, no matter how minor, was overlooked. When Dubois attempted to assert authority over the agents and dismiss her observations, she responded with quiet confidence, systematically presenting proof of every fraudulent transaction, every forged certificate, and every misrepresented painting. His arrogance, once a shield, had become his undoing. And the room grew silent as agents, gallery staff, and international experts witnessed the dismantling of a decades-long criminal operation. Amid the tension, the gallery staff began to blossom in ways that mirrored Zara's influence. James, the night security guard, organized an impromptu poetry session for visiting agents and staff, connecting patterns in language to the analytical skills they were observing in the investigation. The head gardener used the opportunity to illustrate the parallels between plant patterns and brushstroke analysis, while the kitchen staff demonstrated the precision needed in culinary arts as a metaphor for the meticulousness required in authenticating artwork. The mansion, once a place of rigid hierarchy and concealed expertise, now thrummed with creativity, collaboration, and mutual respect. Marie watched with quiet pride, realizing that the lessons she and Zara had cultivated in secrecy had now rippled outward, transforming an entire institution. As evening descended, Zara coordinated with international teams to finalize the evidence packet that would be presented to authorities in courts worldwide. The documents contained a detailed mapping of the forgery network, names, locations, operational methods, and links between forgers and collectors. Her multilingual abilities allowed for seamless verification and translation, ensuring that no detail could be misinterpreted. Agent Thompson, impressed by the young girl's capabilities, remarked that Zara's contributions had not only accelerated the investigation but had fundamentally redefined the way cross-border art fraud cases could be approached. Even Dubois lawyers, though begrudgingly, recognized the thoroughness of her work, realizing that their client's deception had been meticulously documented by someone many had dismissed as a mere. The mansion seemed almost surreal in its calm. Zara and Marie sat together in the kitchen, the brass library key resting on the worn wooden table between them. Marie poured tea, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion and emotion, while Zara reviewed notes one last time before preparing for the next day's press conference. They spoke quietly about the significance of what had occurred, understanding that the events of the past weeks had far-reaching consequences. It was not just the exposure of a fraudulent network. It was the affirmation that talent, perseverance, and intelligence could emerge from places society often overlooked. Marie, her voice soft with awe, reminded Zara that every small sacrifice she had made, every quiet encouragement, every extra moment spent on her studies had contributed to this historic moment. Zara, her eyes shining with determination, replied that the real work was just beginning, changing the art world, empowering hidden talent, and proving that brilliance required neither permission nor privilege. The next day, the press conference was unlike anything the world had seen. News vans lined the streets for blocks, satellite trucks stretched in long lines, and reporters from continents far and wide crowded the mansion's main gallery. The room buzzed with anticipation, everyone eager to witness the young girl who had exposed an international art fraud network. Dr. Whitmore introduced Zara with gravity and admiration, emphasizing that her skills, intellect, and courage had been instrumental in dismantling one of the most sophisticated criminal operations in modern history. Flashbulbs exploded as Zara approached the podium, her new professional attire symbolizing both her growth and the respect she had earned. The gallery, once a place where she had been dismissed and overlooked, now stood as the center of international attention, a testament to talent, resilience, and justice. Questions from journalists poured in from all directions, covering her linguistic skills, analytical methods, and experiences in navigating the complex investigation. Zara answered each with calm authority, effortlessly switching between languages to respond to inquiries from reporters in French, Italian, Spanish, and German. Her detailed explanations of brushwork analysis, pigment composition, and historical research left even seasoned art experts impressed. Social media platforms erupted with clips of her responses, trending hashtags emphasizing that talent has no uniform and highlighting the importance of recognizing overlooked brilliance. Stories poured in from around the globe, teachers recounting students previously underestimated, parents sharing experiences of children whose talents had been ignored, and employees describing how they had been dismissed despite exceptional skills. The impact was immediate, widespread, and deeply personal. In the midst of the media frenzy, Mrs. Victoria Petton approached the podium. The woman who had mocked and dismissed Zara weeks earlier now stood under the scrutiny of international cameras, visibly uncomfortable yet compelled to confront her past actions. She issued a public apology, acknowledging her unfair treatment of Zara and the failure to recognize her extraordinary intelligence and dedication. Zara, demonstrating remarkable grace and foresight, accepted the apology but shifted the focus toward positive action, supporting educational initiatives and programs for children from underprivileged backgrounds. Her response resonated deeply with the audience, emphasizing maturity, empathy, and the broader moral imperative of nurturing hidden talent. Over the following weeks, the gallery underwent a transformation in its institutional culture. Hiring practices were revised to prioritize demonstrated skill over formal credentials. Scholarship programs were established for working students, and mentorship opportunities were expanded. International museums began re-evaluating their approaches, inspired by Zara's story, and exhibitions highlighted contributions from previously overlooked staff. Dubot network had been fully dismantled, assets recovered, and fraudulent works returned to rightful owners. The ripple effects extended beyond the art world, influencing education, corporate hiring, and community recognition programs. Zara continued her work at the gallery, mentoring other young people from backgrounds similar to hers. Every Saturday she led informal classes in multiple languages, art authentication techniques, and critical thinking skills. She encouraged her students to see opportunity where others saw limitations and to value knowledge above social status, age, or economic background. Marie, ever present, continued to provide guidance and support, proud that her sacrifices had created lasting change not only for her daughter, but for countless others. Staff members, inspired by Zara's example, pursued personal projects and skills development, demonstrating the cascading effect of recognition, mentorship, and empowerment. By the end of the part, the gallery was no longer just a space to admire art, it had become a living symbol of hope, education, and justice. The once overlooked Maid's daughter had proven that brilliance exists everywhere, waiting for someone perceptive enough to recognize it. Through determination, intelligence, and courage, Zara had not only dismantled a criminal network but had also transformed the lives of everyone around her, showing that talent requires neither privilege nor approval, only recognition and opportunity. Months after the International Expose, the Whitmore Gallery had become a symbol not only of artistic excellence, but of the transformative power of recognition. Visitors walked through the grand halls not just to admire the brushstrokes of centuries-old masterpieces, but to witness the story of a 12-year-old girl who had changed the art world forever. Zara Williams, once the invisible daughter of a humble museum maid, now stood as a living testament to the truth that talent has no uniform and brilliance requires neither permission nor privilege. Every hallway, every gallery, every corner of the mansion seemed to hum with the energy of possibility, reflecting the ripple effects of her courage, intelligence, and determination. Zara and Marie sat in the same modest kitchen where they had once pored over library books in secret. The brass key rested on the wooden table between them, a silent reminder of the journey that had begun with curiosity, perseverance, and love. Marie's hands trembled slightly as she poured tea, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Zara," she whispered, her voice full of awe and pride, "you've changed everything. Not just here, not just for us, but for the world." Zara smiled, her eyes bright and steady. "Mama," she replied, "this isn't about me. It's about proving that knowledge, skill, and dedication can come from anywhere, any background, any circumstance. And it's our responsibility to notice it, nurture it, and protect it wherever we find it." The gallery staff, once overlooked, had been transformed by Zara's influence. James, the night security guard, now led poetry workshops for children visiting the museum, his verses weaving lessons about observation, patience, and imagination. The head gardener had started botanical illustration classes for young artists, demonstrating the intricate patterns of nature and the patience required to capture them. The chef's international cooking lessons had become popular events, teaching visitors not only culinary techniques but lessons in discipline, precision, and creativity. Every person, once dismissed as ordinary or invisible, now found purpose and pride in their unique contributions. Their hidden talents finally recognized and celebrated. Zara herself had become a mentor to countless young people who, like her, had been overlooked by traditional systems. Every Saturday she welcomed children from underserved communities into the gallery, teaching them languages, analytical thinking, and art history. She encouraged them to question, to explore, and to trust in their own abilities. She emphasized that formal credentials were only one way to prove expertise and that passion, perseverance, and intelligence often mattered far more. Her young students looked up to her not just as a prodigy, but as someone who had lived proof that determination and curiosity could open doors that had once seemed locked. News of Zara's accomplishments spread beyond the art world, reaching schools, corporations, and governments worldwide. Educational institutions began reconsidering their admissions criteria, emphasizing demonstrated talent over mere grades. Corporations re-examined hiring policies, recognizing that brilliance often existed in unexpected places. Museums across multiple continents implemented mentorship programs to uncover hidden talent among staff who had long been overlooked. And ordinary individuals began to take Zara's lesson to heart, noticing the quiet genius in their co-workers, neighbors, and children, and understanding that every overlooked person carried potential waiting to be recognized. The impact was felt most profoundly in the lives of those who had